Kerala Electricity Supply Code 2014. Disconnection, Dismantling and Reconnection. For departmental exam, in-service exams, PSC exams, UPSC exams, various other exams, officials and public. Disconnection, Dismantling and Reconnection. 138. Grounds for disconnection. Grounds for disconnection. 1. The licensee shall not disconnect the supply of electricity to any consumer except on any one or more of the following grounds. A. If the consumer defaults in payment of the dues payable to the licensee as per the bill or demand notice or any order issued by a competent authority within the period stipulated therein. B. If the security provided by the consumer has become insufficient or the consumer fails to provide additional security as required by the licensee. C. If the consumer is found to have indulged in theft of electricity. D. If the failure to disconnect is likely to cause health hazard or safety risk or damage to property or to the consumer or to any other person. E. If the conduct or continuance of any business or industry or activity being carried out in any premises becomes unlawful due to lack of necessary permission from the competent authority or due to withdrawal of such permission by any competent authority. F. If the licensee is mandated to do so by an order of a legal authority competent to issue such a mandate. D. If the licensee is entitled to do so under an agreement with the consumer. H. If the installation of the consumer does not comply with the applicable rules or any other reasonable requirements stipulated by the licensee. I. If the consumer has contravened the provisions of the code or of the act which entitles the licensee to disconnect the supply. J. If the writing apparatus, equipments or installation at the premises of the consumer is found to be defective or unsafe or there is leakage of electricity. K. If the consumer is found to have altered the position of the meter and related apparatus or if the consumer uses any apparatus or appliance other than the one authorized by the licensee. I. If the consumer if the consumer uses the energy in such a manner as to endanger the service lines, equipment, electric supply means and other works of the licensee. M. If it is found that energy is being used in any manner which unduly or improperly interferes with the efficient supply of electricity to any other consumer. N. If at any time the consumer is found to be using energy for a purpose other than for which it was intended or provided. O. If the consumer extends or allows supply of electricity to any other premises from his connection without the permission of the licensee. P. If the supply of electricity to the consumer is liable to be disconnected as per any of the provisions in the code. Then 2. In the case of detection of theft of electricity, the supply of electricity shall be disconnected immediately as provided in subsection 1A of section 135 of the Act. Then 139. Procedure for disconnection. 1. The licensee shall, in the case of disconnection proposed on the grounds mentioned in clause A and B of subregulation 1 of regulation 138 above, issue a disconnection notice in writing as per section 56 of the Act with a notice period of not less than 15 clear days, intimating the consumer about the grounds for disconnection and directing him to pay the dues with the penal charges within the notice period. 2. If the consumer fails to permit the dues within such notice period, the licensee may disconnect the service of the consumer on the expiry of the said notice period by cutting off the supply in the manner as the licensee may deem fit, provided that the licensee shall not disconnect the supply to a consumer under this sub-regulation if the consumer deposits under protest an amount equal to the sum claimed from him or equal to the electricity charges due from him for each month calculated on the basis of the average charge for electricity paid by him during the preceding 6 months, whichever is less, pending disposal of any dispute between him and the licensee. Provided further that supply shall not be disconnected after 1 pm on any day or on holidays. I repeat, provided further that the supply shall not be disconnected after 1 pm on any day or on holidays so that the consumer is not deprived of a chance to remit the dues on the same day and get reconnection. Question number 3. Then 3. The licensee shall disconnect the supply to the consumer immediately if the disconnection is on the grounds in clause C and D of subregulation 1 of regulation 138 and the consumer may be given intimation to that effect soon after the disconnection. 4. In the case of disconnection as per clause E to P of subregulation 1 of regulation 138, the supply shall be disconnected only after giving a notice for a period not less than 7 clear days and intimating the consumer about the grounds for disconnection. 5. The supply shall be disconnected only if the grounds of the disconnection as mentioned in clause E to P of subregulation 1 of regulation 138 are not removed or rectified within the notice period. Then 6. The licensee shall, after disconnection on the grounds mentioned in subregulation 1 of regulation 138, give intimation to the consumer as per format given in Annexure 18 to the code, to the effect that the consumer shall remove the cause of disconnection within 180 days from the date of disconnection, and that if he fails to do so, the supply will be dismantled without any further notice. Then 140. Disconnection of supply on the request of the consumer. The licensee may disconnect supply to the consumer for such a period as requested by the consumer under intimation to him. Then 141. Charges payable during the period of disconnection. The consumer is liable to pay the charges, if any, as approved by the Commission during the period of disconnection also, provided that no charge shall be due to the licensee for the period which is in excess of 180 days from the date of disconnection if the connection remains continuously disconnected for 180 days except on the request of the consumer. Then 142. Unauthorized reconnection. 1. The licensee shall take steps to prevent unauthorized reconnection of the disconnected supply. 2. Wherever the licensee discovers that supply has been reconnected in an unauthorized manner, licensee may initiate action as per provisions of section 138 of the Act. Then 143. Termination of agreement for supply of electricity. 1. The consumer cannot ordinarily terminate the agreement for supply of electricity before the expiry of the initial lock-in period of 1 year from the date of agreement in the case of LT connections and before the expiry of lock-in period of 2 years in case of HT or EHT connections. Then 2. After such lock-in period, the consumer may apply to the licensee for termination of the agreement with effect from a date which shall be after 30 days from the date of such application. provided that if the agreement is to be terminated on the request of the consumer before expiry of the initial lock-in period, the consumer shall be liable to pay charges as specified below. 1. The demand charge or fixed charge for a period of 6 months or the period by which the total duration of the agreement falls short of look-in period, whichever is lower. 2. The estimated expenditure for removal of the service line and associated equipment in the case of HT or EHT consumer. Provided further that whenever an agreement is terminated on notice given by the consumer, the licensee shall, within 2 working days after termination, given a written intimation in the format given in Annexure 19 to the Code. Provided also that the demand charge of fixed charge payable as specified in clause 1 of first proviso shall not be realized from a small scale industrial unit or a cottage industrial unit if such unit is closed permanently before the expiry of the lock-in period due to reasons beyond its control and produces a certificate to the effect from the concerned competent authority in the industries department. 3. If the service connection of the consumer remains continuously disconnected for 180 days, except upon the request of the consumer, the agreement may be terminated after giving a notice of 15 days, 15 days to the consumer. 4. The licensee shall issue a demand note to the consumer in writing under acknowledgement within 10 days of receipt of request from the consumer for termination of the agreement. Then 144. Grounds for dismantling of service. 1. The service shall be dismantled on the following ground. A. On termination of the agreement. B. If the grounds on which the supply was disconnected are not removed or rectified within the notice period. Then 2. If the agreement is terminated or if the consumer does not remove or rectify the grounds for disconnection, the licensee shall arrange dismantling of the service connection. Then 145. Dismantling on the request of the consumer. 1. In case a consumer decides his service to be dismantled and the service connection agreement to be terminated, he shall apply for the same in the format specified in Annexure 20 to the Code. Then 2. The licensee shall give a written acknowledgement of receipt of such request on the spot. 3. The licensee shall, within 10 days from the receipt of the request, carry out a special reading and prepare a final bill including all arrears up to the date of such billing. Then 4. The licensee may disconnect the supply of electricity immediately after the special reading is taken. 5. On payment of all dues by the consumer, the licensee shall issue a no due certificate and a receipt for the payment with the words final bill stamped on it. Then 6. Thereafter, the licensee shall not have any right to recover any charge for any period prior to the date of final bill. Then 7. The licensee shall not raise any bill after dismantling. Then 146. Supply of electricity not to be disconnected when utilized and paid for by a lawful occupier of the premises. In case of the consumer request for disconnection of supply or for dismantling of service, while the supply is being utilized and paid for by a lawful occupier of the premises, the supply shall not be disconnected and service shall not be dismantled. Then 147. Reconnection of supply. 1. The licensee shall reconnect the service of the consumer which was disconnected under Regulation 139 within 24 hours of payment of past dues, reconnection charges and other charges as applicable for that category of consumer and after getting necessary formalities completed from the side of the consumer. Then 2. If the ground for disconnection of the consumer has been remedied, the licensee shall give reconnection within 24 hours. 3. The licensee may charge a reconnection fee as approved by the Commission. 4. In case the supply is disconnected on the request of the consumer, the licensee shall give reconnection on the request of the consumer within 24 hours of the payment of all dues by the consumer. 5. The charges for disconnection and reconnection shall be in accordance with the schedule of miscellaneous charges as per Schedule 1 of the Code. Thank you.